All right. Welcome, everybody, to another installment of Street Poets Presents. Chance where we get to bring in incredible artists, incredible people to come and speak and share their story and the work that they do around the world. And today is a special treat, particularly for me. I get to introduce y'all to an artist that I've literally known for years. I mean, I've known this brother since I was probably around 19, 20 years old. We spent a lot of our young youth's times together, you know, living and creating through spoken word poetry and traveling around and doing incredible things. And Kane Smego is our guest today. He is an international touring spoken word poet and hip hop artist, theatrical performer, educator, and National Poetry Slam finalist. This man is an associate director as an artist alumnus of Next Level, a cultural diplomacy program that sends American hip hop artists around the world to use music and dance in promoting cultural exchange. And that's pretty freaking incredible. He's done that for a few years. It's taken him to 5 continents, including hip hop residencies in Zimbabwe, Thailand, Brazil, Cambodia, Morocco, Guatemala, Dominican Republic, Mongolia, Peru, and Bolivia. And you're actually going to be headed to Argentina in like a handful of days, which is crazy. This man has created a one-man show called Temples of Lung and Air, which is fire. I mean, everything he does is pretty dope as far as I know. His work is of hip-hop theater and premiered and Playmakers Repertory Company in 2018. He's a TED Talk fellow. This man has won numerous awards. He's featured on Rockstar songs that have went viral. The dude is, they gave me the key to the city in Durham. You know, they're naming a barbecue sauce after his beard called Salt and Pepper. This man is an incredible. I'm building up to it. This man's an incredible artist, and I'm really excited to introduce him to our community. Everyone, please enjoy the work and artistry of Mr. Kane Smego.
Oh, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, brother.
Appreciate you, Q. What's up, Street Poets community? How y'all doing out there? Always crazy to like rock something. You can't vibe off the energy of the audience, but I know you're out there, and I'm gonna rock off the energy of the audience here in the room. Thank you for that. Like, I think as artists, a lot of times we get kind of sheepish when people are rating our bios while we there, like talking about when I'm not in the room.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that. It's better than people being like, he's a rapper and a poet, and then they pick you up on stage in front of an audience, which has definitely happened too. So really excited to be here. Share some pieces. I'm an MC and a poet, so I love doing poetry. I like making music. I'm an MC, also known as a rapper, right? Hip hop artist. And yeah, just everything that has to do with words. So I'm going to share an excerpt from my one-man show today, maybe spit some bars for you. Those are the hip-hop heads out there in the crowd. And just really want to say shout out to Street Poets and to Matthew and to Alicia Wise for having me out. So appreciate y'all. Love you. So yeah, I was thinking a lot about what I wanted to share today. I talked with Matthew a little bit about the work that Street Poets has been doing. And one thing that's been on my mind a lot in the last couple of years, we've had a lot of time to think, right? Pandemic, is thinking about, and all these Marvel movies too, is thinking about like superpowers, different skill sets that people have that we use to connect with the world, to navigate through our trauma, to work through whatever difficulties we have in life, to process things that are happening. And I've been really lucky that words have been that for me. Hip hop, since I was really, really young. I remember the first time I ever heard hip hop was Chris Kelly and Chris Smith. I'm gonna look over sometimes because I gotta connect with the 80 babies in the room.
I got you.
Chris Kelly and Chris Smith, of course, better known as Criss Cross. They were these 13 and 14-year-old rappers from Atlanta, produced by Jermaine Dupri. And I was a young kid from Durham, North Carolina, so I was from the South. So to everyone else, they were like the little kids that rapped. To me, they were like the big kids that I was trying to be like when I grew up. Right down the road in ATL. And their album was the first one I ever got on cassette tape, which of course meant you had to fast forward through all the wax songs, right? flip it over to hear the second half of the album. It was called Totally Crossed Out. May have seen the cover where they have like the backwards starter jackets and backwards jeans. I'm pretty sure I wore my jeans and jacket backwards for like half a day before I realized that, you know, it was hard to walk. It looked kind of ridiculous, and it was probably never going to be a thing. We knew that then.
You know, you did one day.
It was never a thing. I think maybe half a day at school. And you know, my mom's partner growing up, Burley, who was like a second father figure to me, he was an old head, so he used to always be like, you know, hip hop, rap is nothing new. It's the same thing. The Last Poets and the Watts Prophets and Gil Scott-Heron and Amiri Baraka and Sonia Sanchez and Nikki Giovanni and a bunch of other names that at the time I hadn't heard of did back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And of course he was right. But I was a knucklehead kid. I didn't want to hear none of that, right? And when we think about hip hop in the modern sense, we think about late 70s, early 80s. In the beginning, right? A lot of different figures. We talk about the different elements. Two of the most important elements and two of the most important figures in hip hop during that time being the MC and the DJ. Right. Now, in the beginning, the DJ was actually the star of the show, the master of ceremonies. What we now call a rapper was just a hype man or hype woman, right? Making some noise, getting the crowd hype, being like, DJ Cuban on the ones and twos, make some noise. But the owner of a white Toyota Corolla, please move your car, you're double parking, your lights are on. That's like what rappers actually did before they were rappers, right? But once they started sliding in some clever wordplay, rhyming their speech, that spotlight kind of shifted from the fingers behind the turntables to the mouth behind the microphone. But DJs kept up too now through innovation. With two turntables instead of one and this thing called a crossfader, they could switch between two records and keep loading in new records so the music never stopped. And with good timing, the crossfader could kind of move back and forth between the record on the left and the record on the right, blending them in different ways, like I've grown up between songs, between left and right, between my mother and her partner Burley in Durham, North Carolina during the year, and my dad, brother, and grandparents on vacations. They all lived together up in West Virginia. Now, my grandma is a beautifully hefty woman. I mean, every recipe gets a stick of butter, and she loves feeding people. Her claim to fame is homemade cookies every Christmas. I remember this one year. She made 3,000 cookies. No lie. She'll sit at the dining room table, patient as a watchmaker, learning the secrets of time until 30 metal tins gather like pyramid stone on the kitchen counter, each guarding a different flavor of sweet. There are rum balls that my brother likes to pop out a handful and try to get tipsy, peanut blossoms, German chocolate, and ice cream that have no ice or cream, but grandma swears they melt in your mouth. And they do. And my grandma is actually the mischievous one. She's the one who's always kidding around, throwing in a dirty joke here and there. My grandpa is Catholic, quiet, pretty serious. He's a World War II vet. And my dad says it took him decades before he spoke a word about it, even with his own kids. He lost his best friend, Tex, in the war, and probably some of his humanity. But to us, he was still just grandpa with a wisp of a dozen hairs left on the top of his head that I like to style into a point and put the Dairy Queen soft serve twist on the end. He wears Walmart jeans jacked up past the belly button and dons racism like a hand-me-down that was once called fashion. Burley, my mom, meet when I'm 4. He's got a master's in African-American history and political science. He'd been an activist in the 70s and 80s and a professor at a college in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Grandma and Grandpa call him Barley when I see them. My father chuckles, says your mother sure does love chocolate. My brother flicks a Confederate flag Zippo lighter he got from a friend at school, and I see the stars and bars light up my neighbor's window on Mom's apartment building back home. Burley's face becomes a silent war as he explains the origin. 13 stars on the flag look a lot like 13 Klansmen doing jumping jacks, white freckles on the cheeks of the devil, and he's grinning. White rebel fleet writes quite legibly, black elegy squeezed from the metal. Don't tell me it's the symbol of our pride and the South. Some people try to say it's the symbol of Southern pride, King, but the truth is it was created to promote white supremacy by a government that fought to ensure that black people, the blacks don't know how to talk right, King, and don't take care of their kids. They're not father. The man was not my father, teaching me to play chess I teach my homeboy Sergio across the street, and my Sega Genesis collects dust while our queens catfight on the stoop. Grandma says Halle Berry is a pretty black woman. Grandpa asks how Barley's doing, smiling as he says the name. My father says your mother sure does love chocolate. In first grade, Burley, my mom sent me careening over pine cones and grass, and my bike becomes my spaceship. My teacher that year is Mrs. McKnight. She's black. We learn basic arithmetic, and in February study Dr. King and Rosa Parks. Grandma says Whoopi Goldberg is uglier than sin. Grandpa tells war stories claiming black soldiers were scaredy cats. Little old me, I argue with them to my tears, chin strapped. My dad scolds them both for being racist, but then he asks how Barley's doing. In third grade, Burley takes me to see Jet Li and Jackie Chan on the big screen at a Kung Fu film festival, and 10,000 imaginary bad guys die of roundhouse kicks in my living room. We learn our times tables that year, read our first novels, write short essays. Grandpa says black folks can't speak proper English. Grandma calls Brazil nuts with the word, calls them toes. Dad says chocolate. Now, fourth grade is North Carolina history. Tar Heels, tobacco auctions, and the Appalachian Mountains. We learned that slavery was here, but it ended, they tell us. I mean, Grandpa says Thomas Jefferson treated his slaves like family. The Cardinals, the state bird, the dog with the state tree, and flower, Jim Hunt was governor. We learned that segregation was here, but it ended too. I mean, racism was here, but now black folks can be anything they want. Grandma said they shouldn't be. Married to white folks, though. I asked Burley, my mom, why aren't you married? They tell me a piece of paper doesn't make their love more real. Burley puts me to bed, rubs my back until I fall asleep. In the summer, it's my father who puts me to bed, rubs my back until I slip into a memory. The first time I hear someone call the N-word is kindergarten. I'm 6. A black neighbor 2 years younger named Isaiah joins us to play when an older white kid named Jonathan calls him the word, his smile, opening slow and silent as the flame of a blowtorch in a house of wax. I watch tears melt from Isaiah's 4-year-old eyes. And my cousin, she's the only teenager on the scene. She chases Jonathan until he escapes into a drain pipe like some deleted scene from Stand By Me or Stranger Things. And looking back now, I realize that he was just a parakeet in Jim Crow's living room. I mean, we all parakeets of one doctrine or another. I was a songbird caught between anthems, between left and right, or far left and far right, the music in my head getting louder, Burley's voice and my grandparents jumbled like a rookie DJ fumbling with the crossfader. Back Reagan, Ronald Reagan was a wonderful president, wonderful Reagan. Ronald was a right-wing demagogue, a fanatic, wing, Reagan, wing, fanatic president, wonderful fanatic, in the morning. Good morning in the morning. Skip it in the morning. This is National Public Radio. Good morning. Welcome to the Rush Limbaugh Show in the morning. Black leaders met today in the morning. Black leaders met in the morning. Let me put it to you this way. The NFL all too often looks like a game between the Bloods and the Crips without any weapons. There, I said it, in the morning. Black leaders in the morning. A game between Bloods and Crips without any weapons in the morning. Bloods and Crips without any weapons in the morning. Bloods and Crips without any weapons in the morning. Black leaders in the morning. Blood without any weapons in the morning. Black morning. Black leaders morning. Black morning. Black morning. Black leaders morning. Black leaders morning. Black leaders mourning. Black leaders mourning. Blood without any weapons. Are you confused? I was too. So in 4th grade, Burley comes in my class to speak. Teach us about something other than Tar Heels and tobacco auctions. When he enters, a room full of crayons drop. A kid digging up his nose freezes mid-nostril, his puzzled eyes ping pong between us. It's like Bart Simpson turning in his homework, Barney cussing out Baby Bop with a whole Power Rangers team dying in a pool of blood at the end of an episode. These things don't happen in a 4th grader's understanding of the world. White kids have white parents. That's your daddy? He's black? He's my mom's boyfriend, I say. Eyes stuck to the carpet, fingers twirling hair. But they ain't married, though. Marriage is the state religion. That's not in the textbooks. I barely speak to Burley that day. Benedict Arnold and a juicy juice mustache. After school, my mom tells me Burley says I acted a little strange in class. She asks what happened, and I deny it. But the question festers, oozes, in a bubble bath war between G.I. Joes and Ninja Turtles. I wonder why I acted so awkward in class. It's like I'm picking a scab on a wound I don't remember getting. Something has entered me. I mean, I was always the cultured kid. Ooh, George Washington Carver invented peanut butter before I ever read Kimberly Crenshaw. Ooh, Rosa Parks. I was a blind intersection. Raised at junction of white and male, bathed in smart boy, basking proud in the slick shine of this baptism. Fourth grade's the first time I smelled the gasoline. I realized fire sounds like a whisper, and I too can be a burning threat. The trusted steed discovering the Trojans lurking inside it. Most days are smooth blue certainty. This one was lightning, making lanterns of the storm clouds, a jagged truth, illuminating what I hadn't seen before. The way Burley's skin always entered a room before he did. The way my grandpa pronounced the N-word just like the kid in my neighborhood. The way my father always said, your mother sure does love chocolate. And the words have become me. How I became silence, holding an X-Men lunchbox, my body a slur, spoken in my inside voice, a parakeet whistling Dixie all along.
Man, Kane Smego. Yo, my goodness, man. Thank you so much for sharing that piece, man. Absolutely beautiful stuff. If you at home and you listening, snap. We can feel it. We can feel the snaps. Absolutely beautiful stuff, man. My goodness. Yeah, so we wanted to, when we first were thinking about what we were going to do together, we were talking about a lot of different things. You were like, well, I kind of got this piece from this one-man show that I was doing and how, we can open up with it. You're like, I'll send it to you. You can take it. I was like, don't send it to me. Don't send it to me. I want to get the raw reaction. And I'm really thankful that I got to see that for the first time there because, man, just a powerful testimony. I constantly say my favorite form of poetry is honesty. And honesty is a really, really powerful thing. And man, what a beautiful demonstration of poetry, of honesty. You, and then also just like the collaboration between like storytelling, poetry, and hip hop, bro. Yeah. Like super, super fire, man. Like I really, really love that. And definitely makes me want to be like, man, I need to get the whole thing, man. I need the whole project, bro. I need the whole project, man. Yeah. Next time I wanted to say, so we'll start off with some basic stuff, which is you're a poet, you're a rapper, you're an educator, you're a playwright, you're an actor. I know that's not on the bio, but I see you. You know what I'm saying? And you're a father, man. You're a new father, which is exciting, bro. Which is exciting stuff. So you're officially Big Daddy Kane. You know what I'm saying? Just so the community knows, this is official Big Daddy Kane. Out of all these, so what I have trouble with in me, right? Because I try to be multiple things. We're creative people. Yeah. Where do you think is your base love? Like if you were, if all of your skills as an artist is your infinity stones, and together you make it your gauntlet, right? What's the one stone you gotta keep?
I mean, I think end of the day, the word, man. Yeah. I think that people ask me a lot, and when we'd have talkbacks after the show, like, what inspired this, and for me, the biggest thing, I'm sure you can relate because we have a background in hip hop and poetry and all the things, I like to draw here and there, is like, I found that I was compartmentalizing so many of those disciplines and genres for so many years. I was an MC when I hit up a cypher or I perform at a show. And then when I would go to Southern Friday or National Poetry Slam, it's like you do a poem on stage and there's no music allowed and there's no, there's no props. And then getting into theater, where those things open up and you're like, props, like, can I wear it? Like I remember at first when they had like, all the acting coach and the projection designer and lighting, all like the team that they have to work with you. And I'm like, look, I remember the director was like, look, I know that you're traditionally like, poet and hip hop artist. So it's going to be a little bit different than a major, main work of theater. It was at a regional theater, which was like a big leap and opportunity for me. And he was like, so, we can kind of make it whatever you want it to. And I was like, essentially like, we don't have to go too hard on you. And I was like, nah, like let's go at the script, my performance, like the acting coach, the vocal. I was like, I want to continue to expand the skill set. And the main reason that I wanted to do a piece of theater is I wanted to blur all those lines. I wanted to break down all those lines that we put. All right, now I'm about to go and do this song, and then I'm gonna do this. I mean, there definitely are those moments where, like, you know, I put out an album in 2020, and it had been several years since I put out an album. I was on a few songs and featured and spitting and verses, and I'm a cipher head, you know. I always got bars, but songs. And so that was like a 2-year process of like, I wanted to put out an album. And right before that was the one-man show. So I think they do happen and they do different things. I know you were like, sometimes I want to just let the music guide me. And it's also collaborative, right? You work with it. You go in the studio and you're with musicians or you're with a beat maker or producer and you're creating stuff. I'm humming stuff from my head or beatboxing and then he makes it. Whereas like poetry is a very solitary creative process, unless you're doing a group piece or something, you know, which I like about it too, though, right? Because then for other times I'm like, man, I don't want a beat to guide me or put parameters on what I can do. I just need to write. So I think
use the word, right?
The word, man. I
was talking to this English professor and actually this guy, he actually teaches spoken word as an accredited class at UC Santa Barbara. It's crazy.
Oh, wow.
Like, you know, like 200 students in this classroom and he's doing a lecture on spoken word.
Wow.
And it's powerful because he's opening up and he's like, you know, this is the oldest craft in human experience. It's the oldest, like, this is before we were keeping records, before we were documenting anything. It was just the word. It was just how we spoke to people and navigated our own emotions. There's this dope TED Talk by Ethan Hawke, right? And he's talking and he's like, you know, people don't go to poetry in their normal lives. You know, people don't think poetry is there for them at all until something happens in their life, until they lose a family member, until they something happens to them, right? Or even the inverse, right? Like they have a baby, right? They fall in love, right? And they look around the world for something to be able to translate these emotions. And that's where they go to the art. That's where they go to the word. And for you, what, you know, has there ever been moments in your life where you were like, wow, this thing that I'm doing, this thing that I'm creating is so absolutely necessary to my survival right now?
I mean, I think the piece I just shared would fall in that category for me because, you know, it's rare that us as poets, at least I'll speak for myself, but I'm sure you can relate. It's rare that we sit down and write a polished piece that we're happy with that feels done in one sitting, right? It is days, weeks, years. Sometimes we have that feels like that divine connection to the universe, whatever it is you believe in, and it hits you and the muse comes and you write the piece and you like, this is 98% the final draft. But that's like rare, right? And for me, you know, and I share this with students that I work with as well, when they're like, well, I don't know, like it's not done yet. I'm like, you know, I finished that show when I was 31 years old. It took me 31 years to be able to know how to unpack and process that whole experience of my childhood of growing up between households and parents of different backgrounds and racial dynamics and political viewpoints and like know how to put that into words. And I've been a poet I've been an MC since I was in first grade, bro. I've been rapping and writing poems, you know, but I didn't know how to tell that story. I didn't have I feel like when you sit down to write, I don't know if you ever feel like this, but for me, even though we're like, you know, more right brain creative than like, you know, left brain, you know, of course we're all a mix. When I think about like math class versus English class, it's like they teach you the process to figure out, you know, your proof or whatever, to figure out how to solve this thing. And it's like, you know, even in terms of like nuts and bolts work, sometimes me and my partner talk about this because she has a job where it's like, if you put in 9 hours of work, you get 9 hours of work done. And we have a job where you might put in 30 hours of work and you might get nothing that you like, right? And you might, other days you might have 5 hours and you just hit that zone. So yeah, man. So I think for me, I think that one felt very necessary because it was something that I felt like I was working through in my head for so many years, and to finally sit down and be able to put it into words so I could communicate it out to the world, and be able to connect with other people who didn't have that same exact experience, but had some experience of, you know, a lot of times people come up after the show and be like, I grew up between households that were this and this, you know, fill in the blank on that. And I could connect that feeling of being in the middle and being confused, you know. You know, the poem, obviously the crossfader is a metaphor, but people oftentimes think the radio is also a metaphor, but it's actually literal as well. Because I would go visit my grandparents and my dad in West Virginia, my older brother, and my mom and Burley would drive me to a rest stop. So it's about 5 hours drive from West Virginia, where they lived, to where I lived in North Carolina and Durham. They would drive like 2.5, 3 hours to a rest stop. And then my grandparents would pick me up, or, you know, and Burley, my mom, would be listening to NPR, and I get it. And I'm, you know, 7, 8 years old. I get in my grandparents' car, and it's Rush Limbaugh.
I was about to say, NPR does not exist in West Virginia.
Yo, right?
I've driven through West Virginia, and I'm like,
yeah.
Let's keep going. Let's
So yeah, man. So I think, and obviously, when you're 7 and 8 years old, I didn't understand what that shift was. You might feel it. You feel something inside. What's going on here? But so yeah, man. I think that's been an essential one for me. And I think the second part to that, why it feels essential to me, is that it's both looking at the complexity of who we come from, you know, because I love my grandparents, you know, rest in peace. They were great grandparents in a lot of ways. I remind myself that they were rebels in their own way in their time. My grandmother was Protestant. My grandfather was Catholic, and her family threatened to disown her when they were going to get married. And they got married anyway. Her family didn't speak to her for many years. They finally came around, but they were willing to risk whatever it was, everything, to say this thing doesn't make sense. It's illogical. It goes counter to what we think love should be about. But they had their blind spots, you know, like their blind spots was especially around race. Yeah. And so I feel a moral obligation to take the ethical baton from them and be like, thank you for what you did. I appreciate you. And there's some things that need to shift in the mindset that you instilled in me. And it also is about me also taking accountability for how I show up as a white man in America, you know, like realizing that I grew up with a Black man who was an activist and a political scientist in my household as a second father for my whole childhood. And that still didn't make me immune to learning and internalizing the rules of race, so much so that it affected not only the way I thought about the world, but obviously it affected my behavior, even if in just a subtle way. Like, I was not the quiet kid in class. You could probably relate. I was not the quiet kid in class, and I was the quiet kid that day, you know? So
powerful. That's powerful, man. I think about this, what that poem really is, and what you're processing and what you're talking about in this poem. And I have this conversation at like all my shows, because I think oftentimes when you are looking at the issues in our world, in our society, right, and you wonder, well, how can I help? How can I speak on it? I can't speak on a lot of things, but I can speak on what comes and what responsibilities and what I think as men we could do. Absolutely. So I always spend time in my sets like just talking trash about men, and not necessarily into like just dogging us out, but I think that a big part of deadening the toxicity of what it is to be a male at times is confronting and being honest about it. And saying, yo, like all of us have a toxic thing that we need to work on, including myself here on stage right now talking to you. You know, and I think like that brutal honesty is the only place that growth can really start to come from. And then I transition to say, and that's how you fix race. And that, you know, white people got to start with saying there's a lot of terrible things that need to be worked on. But I think I love this idea of being able to say, look, these are the things that we have learned, and here's the areas that we need to unlearn, and here are the things that we can grow from. And even in all of this, there's going to be missteps. You know, I was saying something saying, you know, even you can practice every day and still fall. You can be the most deliberate person in every action you do and still slip up and still fall back. And I think that when we're able to have honest conversations, there's a lot of growth that can happen in it. And it happens in the most beautiful ways, through poetry, through teaching these things. And you teach poetry and hip hop really pretty much in every theater and every setting you can think of in a lot of ways. You've traveled around the world doing this. In Street Poets, the work that we do has come from a lot of different places around the world. We have our ancestor shrine before us, and even y'all might not be able to see, but even on the floor here are stones that have been bought from street poets from all over the world. Each one of these stones from a different place around the world, and they carry energy. And we use these things in a practice that we do where we set our intentions, and we got our fire, we got the air we're in, and our stones, we believe the stones are the bones of the earth, and of course we have our water, and water through everything always finds a way. I say all this to say, like, there's so much healing in finding your voice. The thing we say is be heard and be healed. I've really just like gripped onto that, and I've been echoing that with a quote from Martin Luther King, which is riot is the voice of the unheard. And that voice, that riot within all of us, right? That has no specific location on the planet. I'm wondering what are some of the similarities you've seen in places outside of our country with the young people you work with in finding their voice, and then what are some of the differences? It's a good question, right? It's a cool question. Yeah.
It's a great question.
What are some of the similarities? What are some of the differences that you're finding in people who are finding their voice for the first time?
It makes I'm like, do I want to talk about it or should I kick it? Because there's a piece I have about the first time that I went to Zimbabwe with Next Level. The first time I did an international hip hop exchange program, and it was I think it's still up there.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what your answer is, and then roll right into that?
Yeah. See if I can remember that one. I wasn't planning on doing that one, but it's I think it's connected. I mean, I think on a basic level, man, everyone's looking for something to help navigate whatever they're going through. So that you see everywhere. I mean, the specifics of how people are doing it, I think, are specific to the needs of the community and their families and what they're coming up in. Like, you know, we got to collaborate with a Mayan hip hop collective in Guatemala and a Mayan community at Lake Atitlan, San Marcos La Laguna, and the cats there, this group called Balam Akpu. You know, that community, I mean, there's a long history. There's the Guatemalan Civil War that was, you know, roughly 60 to 80,000 people that were murdered, predominantly indigenous. It's an open fact. The U.S. government now admits it, that it was the paramilitary groups and the government that overthrew the democratically elected president, Arbenz, was all financed by the U.S. CIA.
Wow.
It's Operation PB Success is the name of the actual U.S. operation. And so when we were in that community, their big thing is like using hip hop as a tool to talk about Mayan cosmovision, which is their kind of religious practice, Mayan history, their community's history, to talk about, I mean, in their bars, they're like talking about things that happened in the Civil War that they heard from grandparents or the grandparents who had passed away, who were killed. So I think for them, that cultural preservation piece, I mean, I consider all what we do as cultural preservation. I take it very seriously as a practitioner and a torchbearer of hip hop. You know, the idea of cultural preservation, but in their case, it really is. It's the culture that they grew up in, that is a marginalized culture that is threatened all around the world, indigenous cultures. And so I think for them, it's like their bars are, I mean, literally you break down their raps, 90% of it is like, they're really talking about and teaching. I remember they were actually teaching one of the Mayan languages down there. They were rapping in Quiche, Cachiquel, and Sutuji. There's a lot of different Mayan dialects, but they were, one of the rappers down there, De La, who's really, really dope, was doing a hip hop school, a program after we left, similar to what we did there in the different elements. And they were teaching beatboxing in order to teach young kids Mayan language, because there's such a stigma around it, and especially if you grow up in the city and it's like, oh, you're the rural, like indigenous kids don't speak that language. We speak Spanish here. And so they were doing like I remember this one that was like what we would do as boots and cats when we're treating people, you know, boots and cats. It was like one of their letters is almost like a TS sound. And which is one of the Mayan guys in the Cosmovision, and he was talking about they were teaching beatboxing, but teaching them how to pronounce the letters in the language. So like really interesting, beautiful, creative ways to navigate the things that they're dealing with through the arts. So I think that's like one example that comes to mind. But I think on a basic level, it's like trying to find ways to navigate the stuff we're dealing with. You know? Yeah.
That's amazing, man. I think sometimes when, you know, we work with a lot of different young people, whether all the way down from elementary to high school. Sometimes we do things with colleges and universities, and we do a lot of work with incarcerated youth as well. I think sometimes the things that we come up to is convincing a young person what they're actually capable of. You know what I mean? And really being like, no, like this is this is something you can do. Like even today we had a workshop and a young person's like, I'm just writing what I'm thinking. This ain't a poem. I'm like, why is it not a poem?
You're like, what do I do?
I said, who says it's not a poem? You? Yeah. I'm like, why you say it's not a poem? Like, what in you is telling you that what you're not writing isn't art and isn't beautiful? Because it's your thoughts, because it's your feelings. Yeah. What tells you that doesn't matter? Right. And I wonder when you're in these places, I'm sure there's varying versions of this, but is there ever those moments of trying to convince a young person that there is a capability within them that they might not see presently?
Yeah. I mean, I think more in the work that I've done around the States and in Durham and similar to you know, working in everything from schools to juvenile detention centers to after school programs. A lot of the hip hop exchange stuff we're doing, while we have some entry level, most of it is like intermediate to advanced young people. So people who like, they at least
they're about that life.
They are about that life. You know, I learned the hard way going in, like, all right, I'm gonna go teach hip hop. And it's like, oh, my students are like as dope as I am. Yeah. You know? But definitely, man, going into spaces and all demographics, all spaces, all ages. You see that with adults too, and it's like wondering where that comes from. That lack of affirmation that creates the voice in the head that's like, nah, don't write it down. Nah, it's not gonna be good enough. You know, and just reminding them. I mean, I think it demystifies it. The closer you are to the age that they were, which I'm sure you can relate. You know, when I was 19, 20 going into schools, Cass was like, oh, word, I can do this? Yeah. It's a little harder when you can still vibe as soon as you spit, you know, you're speaking the common language, but that idea of, I think sometimes we feel distance, that idea of like, oh, you've been a professional, you're in your 30s, you've been doing this. So just reminding them, you know, that my first rap was in first grade. I rapped. It was called the basketball rap. It was about Shaquille O'Neal and Will Chamberlain and all my favorite rappers, and it was horrible. You know, in the tribute to the My Money Don't Wiggle Wiggle, it calls. Do you remember your first rap? Do you remember anything of it? Can you spit it for us? The one that was, I remember one line that was like, "Wait, do you hear that backboard crack? That must be Big Daddy Shaq." That was like one of the bars to give you an idea of what level we're talking about, right? Which, I mean, ain't bad for what? That's pretty good, man. Actually, third grade was that's pretty impressive, man. Third grade, that's impressive. Can you hear that? Can you hear that backboard crack? I was back when Shaq was yamming and taking down the. Man, Shaq can still probably take that one. Well. Listen, man, would you like to bless us with another piece real quick? Yeah, man, I can definitely do that. And feel free to spit anything. It doesn't have to be on the vein of what we've been talking about. But I'm thinking about the Zimbabwe piece just because, that was such a meaningful moment for me. So, let's see. Hey, I love the fact when I called you about the show and you're like, you know what, man, it's like the goal of this is to give people like a window into, you know, artists that they won't normally see if they just go to a regular show. And we can be vulnerable. So this is my vulnerability. Let me see if I still got this piece in the chamber. All right, y'all. For y'all just joining us, this is Street Poets Present. We get to talk to awesome artists. And today we have with us Kane Smego. Appreciate it. So it starts where I come to Zimbabwe with a team of artists to find hip hop and teach a 2-week program with youth and young adults. Now, on the first day, we go out for some authentic grub. They tell me the staple food in Zimbabwe is called sadza, which is definitely one of my new favorite words to say. You can say it with me if you're out there. Sadza. Ooh, it's nice. It's nice. Right? It is nice. It's a hot cornmeal porridge. Sounds a little familiar. When they bring me a steaming plate of what is essentially grits, you know, the Southern boy in me feels right at home. They tell me there are 2 main ethnicities in Zimbabwe, Shona, the majority, and Ndebele, the minority. Later in the week, some of my students will mention a conflict that happened between Shona and Ndebele in the 80s, but leave out the details. And in the silence, I can tell it's not really the time to ask questions. I know there is so much I don't know here. Like at a fast food joint, the cashier becomes a turtle thrown back on its shell, the air, a convulsion of limbs and laughter. I just asked for a napkin. In Zimbabwe, but nobody told me that napkin is the word for diaper. Nobody told me on day 1 of my workshops my students would be dope. I mean, so dope, I feel embarrassed calling myself teacher. So dope that their stage names have better wordplay than some rappers' verses back home. Like 3 of the standouts are Elsewhere, Terra Firma, and the Illustrator. Oh, yeah. Else is Shona, Terra and illustrator are Debele. In my ignorance, I wonder if this means there will be tension in the cipher. Now, in the States, hip hop was born as liberation music, right? A soundtrack for the urban struggle birthed by DJ Kool Herc, a Jamaican immigrant who scraped dancehall flavor from the streets of Kingston and waxed it onto records in the Bronx. In Zimbabwe, my students tell me that hip hop is actually seen as bougie, a flashy American import with candy-painted imperialism. Here in Zimbabwe, dancehall is the music of the hood, which kind of makes coming all the way across the ocean to the continent, to Zimbabwe, to teach a musical genre founded upon drum beats and inspired 4 decades ago by Caribbean and West African dance music, kind of like teaching glaciers about the rhythms of river water. Preaching to the source. Now, after 2 weeks, our final performance is in Glen Norah Township on a stage built beneath a giant tent, and 500 locals waiting wide-eyed to catch a glimpse of hip-hop's headdress. Now, things haven't gone exactly as planned all week. The Wi-Fi has been spotty. The equipment won't sync. The battery in my portable speaker has a lifespan of Vanilla Ice's career. Tonight, I got a migraine made of 808 drums, and my head is a shot put in my palms. I cover one eye with one hand and squint with the left. I see Elsewhere, Terra Firma, and Illustrator take the stage. The three linked up in class and made a song in Shona, Ndebele, and English. It's a trilingual offering in the church of microphones. It sounds like flowers on unmarked graves, like bullets decomposing. I cover my right eye with one hand and watch them build a temple out of lungs and air, storm clouds gathering in their cheeks. I cover my right eye with one hand and I'm like Slick Rick at age 11, staring through a D-train window, learning to look at the world in rhyme. I realize this ain't no program or project or classroom. This is a cipher in all of its magic, and I'm in my element. I've never felt more hip hop than right here, right now in Harare, Zimbabwe. My speech swerves and skips until my cadence curves into my lips into a homage. My knowledge broken and put back together like the broken and put back together like the Fugees. Never feeling I'm polished. I'm flawless as Chris Wallace rocking a Coogee sweater. Tupac with a bandana knotted tighter than all of the hearts of hip hoppers gripping light as the night of his death in Nevada. Listen, I'm Kool Herc in the kitchen with his hands on 2 plates, juggling sadza and grits like a South Bronx merry-go-round, proving that we ain't spinning different records, just remixing the same song. And I've been wrong if any part of me came to Zimbabwe hoping to find hip-hop as if it wouldn't exist until I stuck my flag into it. Didn't exactly know what I was getting myself into. I mean, nobody told me that napkin was the word for diaper. Nobody told me that hip-hop could be the Shona word for forgiveness, for peace, and the Ndebele word for forgiveness, that when spoken in both languages at the same time, it gets summoned the God of dopeness, the God of music, the God of better tomorrows. And I can almost hear hip hop saying to me, I told you so. Can hear the queen herself calling me like, ain't Grandmaster Flash teach y'all nothing? The tables can always turn. Somebody's got to be there to turn them. And dead? Y'all said I was dead, fool. Ain't I always been right on time? Ain't I been chameleon medicine? Whatever you needed me to be to heal all your brethren, to patch a gaping wound the size of a crack house or a trailer park festering of a bleeding city trying desperately to clot. I've been rebel music and party music. Been matchmaker when lonely shoulders met boom boxes, shell toes met tube socks, and flat tops kissed cardboard every 2 blocks. Told you paint your ideas onto train cars to think outside the box. Shit, I Jimmy rigged the hood together with gold ropes and fat laces, a back brace for cats in a rat race, and I may have been sold out, spun round, commodified, Spotify, chopped, screwed, auto-tuned, and watered down. But not a day in my life have I ever been dead. It was up there. It was up there somewhere.
That's crazy, man.
Thank you, man.
Yes, I'm sitting there listening to it, and I'm like, it's so crazy that just this random conversation brought this poem into the space that maybe wouldn't have gotten to the space today.
Yes.
Indeed, that's beautiful, indeed, man. Indeed. That's beautiful.
That.
I love it, man. I love it. Wow.
Thank you.
Wow. Hell yeah.
Appreciate you.
That's so dope, man. I'm like sitting here listening to it, and it's, I love that marriage that you have. And you said something before we talked about that. You said hip hop is you were saying you take this very seriously. What was you saying? Say that again for me.
Cultural preservation.
Cultural
just this
preservation
work that we do. I mean,
absolutely.
Even with the spoken word, man.
Absolutely.
I mean, yes, like this is a culture of how people have navigated and understood the world and imparted that, and being able to be a part of it. And so many people, I think about the folks who have come before, but then the people that are living, the Sana Hanus and the Blues Rogers. Shouts and out. Jessica Karen Moore. I mean, there's so many people that have imparted energy to me and knowledge to me, and I feel a deep responsibility to pay it forward, and so to speak. So.
We had an incredible elder in our community named Maladomo Somé, who I never actually had the opportunity to meet. He's an elder. Was an elder out in Burkina Faso and actually passed away in the last year. But bestowed on us so much knowledge and tools that we use in our practices every day, to kind of really invite in just a deeper sense of understanding to this work that we create. And I think that, like, I love this idea. It's not an idea, but what I love so much about art is that it's like a time machine, to our ancestors, right? Yeah. It's such a conduit to be able to communicate and do these things, man. And I've always just thought that stuff was like super, super dope. Yeah. And I love that you add that so much to your work that you do around the world, man, which is really, really fire. Yeah, man. You're here in LA, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Doing cool things, traveling around. Like I said, just had the baby. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I feel like there's wisdom. There's I feel like human culture is wisdom and foolishness. That's what it is, right? Every place. And so, like, I feel like I've always felt like it's part of what brought me to LA originally from North Carolina, despite amazing community there and so many folks who gave me so much, but I always felt like not all the answers are there. And I don't think all the answers are anywhere, right? There's gems all over. But it makes me think about the time travel thing too, because I know, like, in the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead, it speaks about there's something, I forget the exact quote, but it's this idea of like man's body becomes a corpse and turns to dust. But something about written word or word that's in ink then is like a well-built house that can last for generations. And I think the same is true with spoken word, if it can be remembered, if it can be passed along, but that ability for that wisdom and those jewels and those gems to outlast the individual humans that we are, and be able to pass it on, and pull from the wisdom from the people like the ones sitting behind us. So.
Ashe, all it is. Yes, bro. Indeed. All right. So I want to go to a lightning round, right? Okay, I'm going to a lightning round.
Lightning round.
You know what I'm saying? Impromptu lightning round.
This is like a questionnaire or something.
Yeah, man. I'm just gonna throw out. You got to give me quick answers to quick questions. And it'll be on a varying scale of topics. Okay. For all of our friends who are here listening to this, you got people saying they moved, they loving your work, beautiful stuff. For all the people listening, if you want to throw in quick questions too, feel free to throw in questions in either. I mean, we're streaming on a lot of different platforms, so we got homies in the house right now who can relay questions. So if there are audiences here listening and ask a question, feel free to throw some stuff in. But we're going to do a rapid fire. Okay. And then I'm going to give you an opportunity to maybe bust a few poems and talk for a minute and see what goes. Maybe some bars, whatever. We do got the booth right over here,
Let's go. I gotta get some bars, man.
And I got to say, too, Jay's in the house. We just dropped our Street Poets' newest album, right? Which we're doing. Is it releasing June 2nd? Or it's already out. It's already out. And June 2nd, we're doing a listening party. Is what's happening.
Where can I find that?
You can find it right now on SoundCloud. And there's all kinds of different ways that we've been trying to get it around people. But check out a Street Poets SoundCloud. We also got a Street Poets podcast, right, which is pretty dope. Okay. We've been working on the podcast right now. So check out the podcast. And you mentioned that you just dropped the album in 2020, yeah?
2020, yeah.
Collard Green Music?
Collard Green Music.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Which you can find everywhere.
You can find it everywhere. And I still got some vinyl, actually. I did a run of vinyl.
Nice.
And it was like mid-pandemic. I was foolish and was like, all right, we like 8 months into this thing, so I get a bunch of vinyl, I'll sell some, and then when I hit the road, I'll be out on the road. And it took a while to hit the road. So yeah, if anyone wants some vinyl,
check out Collard Green Music, man. It's fire. Crazy videos too. Really awesome videos. But we're gonna go to a rapid fire questions, and then we're gonna go from here. I'm pulling up the phone to act like I have questions written down, but I don't. Do I? I don't know. All right, let's see. All right, Kane Smego. Starting rapid fire questions. If you could be a dinosaur, what would you be?
Ooh, I want to say pterodactyl for sure.
Pterodactyl.
Pterodactyl, nice. Bro. Can
nice.
Fly, and you a dinosaur?
What one type of barbecue you can only eat? Rest of your life.
What do you mean?
You only have one type of barbecue for the rest of your life.
I mean, North Carolina barbecue.
Ooh,
Chopped pork.
Chopped pork.
Yeah,
All right. Favorite fast food restaurant?
Oh, I'm gonna have to go with Bojangles.
Ooh.
North Carolina. If those of y'all who don't know.
Okay. Are we doing honey mustard or spicy mustard?
I'm gonna go spicy mustard.
Spicy mustard.
Spicy mustard.
Okay, we'll ramp it up a little bit. Top 3 hip hop artists of all time.
Ooh, Andre 3000, Jay-Z,
Hello.
and Black Thought.
Hello.
Yeah.
Look them up, kids. Look them up.
Yeah.
Top 3 influential poets in your life.
Wow.
How about influential poets you know and influential poets you may have read? We could do 3.
Wow.
You could do 2 different lists.
Yeah. Okay. Influential poets I know. Influential poets I may have read.
And you can only have 3, so you're gonna upset a few people.
3 of each.
Yeah, 3 of each.
3 of each. Man, I would have to say, Patricia Smith.
This is red or no?
Either.
You can't cross fade.
What do you mean?
Okay, fine.
Patricia goes on all the lists.
She thinks Patricia Smith does
all the lists.
lists.
When you win the National Poetry Slam and you on Def Poetry and you a National Book Award finalist, you go on all the lists.
Yeah. That's fair enough.
Patricia Smith.
Fair enough.
Patricia Smith. I'm gonna say Blues Rogers, man. North Carolina, you know. And my third one, man, this is tough. You know, I'm gonna say just stylistically because I was an MC. I'm gonna have to say Black Ice.
Black Ice, yeah. Man.
You know, watching somebody get up and spit poems, but it also be bars and poems. And what is he doing? Is he rapping? Is he doing a poem? What is that like? You know, so that's gonna be those 3. And the question was that I know
that you know or that you've read.
Okay,
and then maybe
luckily I know those 3.
That's fair.
They're friends of mine. The Red. So Patricia Smith, easy. I just take that.
Cheater.
Oh man. I really like. Oh man, this is a hard one. This is supposed to be a light.
Rapid fire, lightning rounds.
Oh man. I'm blanking on the brother's name right now who wrote his collection. He's got Coughing and City of Coughing and Dead Radiators. He teaches at UC Amherst. I believe he's Puerto Rican or Nicaraguense. Blanking on his name. He wrote Alabanza. We won't come back to him, but he's a
fire anonymous poet.
He's not either. This is some messed up. And then I would say, I'm gonna say Khalil Gibran. I'm gonna take it way back. Yeah.
Take it eternal with that one.
Yeah,
love it. What was a childhood dream that you had that you gave up on?
That I gave up on. I like how you started.
I
went down a path.
Gave up on.
I was like, I'm gonna be an
I once wanted to be a train driver. Yeah, because as a kid, I thought you could just put it going forward and just fall asleep. It's on rails. Even as a child, I was trying to find ways that
writing poems.
I gotta get paid to sleep.
Man, I was actually really into boxing and martial arts as a kid, and I wanted to be a boxer for the time. Yeah. So that would probably be the one I live vicariously through other homies who are boxers.
Don't run up on this Kane Smego stage.
Don't run up on me.
We have a question that came in from the chat that's a really, really awesome question, which is, how has relocating to LA impacted your pen and artistry, especially as a Southern artist? Fire question.
Wow. Okay. How has LA impacted your pen and artistry, especially as a Southern artist? Probably in subtle ways, just because I'm not steeped in that community like I was, right?
Yeah.
Like you go to events and performances and competitions and readings and shows. It's like, but I think also it has made me think about how to, ironically, I would say it has made me confident that I can be specific to the Southern experience and it can be understood and connected in other places, because that was one of my worries of my show, actually. Even that piece I just did, it was like, people will get it, but like, how much are people going to really get what it's like to grow up in the South?
Yeah.
I got to go do it. And I was in residence at the Detroit Public Theater. And that was another moment that it was like, okay, this does resonate, to do excerpts and stuff out here. So I think, being out here has just given me that sense of like, okay, these things do resonate and it's all right. You can be specific. It's like Suhair Hamad, one of my favorite poets, talks about there's this tendency we have to think that like being broad and general is the most universal. Like we're afraid if we're too specific and personal in this, and when I'm writing it, like people are not gonna be able to relate to what I'm saying. But she actually argues that it's actually the opposite because of our ability to empathize. Even though we can never know what it's like to live another person's experience, we'll take that ride with you if you're specific and personal. We'll step into your shoes for a moment, and it resonates deeper on a human level in a more visceral, like emotional way than if we're just, it's like the difference between me doing a poem about racism as a broad topic versus your poem that I shared, and being able to, so
that's powerful. I love that, man. And I think it's when you realize, when you think that, oh, my experience is something nobody will ever relate to. No one can ever relate. You realize how common your experiences actually are. Which can be heartbreaking, but can also be reaffirming that you're like, yo, I'm not alone in this world that we're in right now. That's super powerful, man. Man, I love that. Okay, so I want to also ask, what is something artistically that you keep with you when you travel?
Artistically, you mean like a journal or something like that?
As an artist, do you travel with a journal? Do you travel with these things? What is something artistically you got to keep with you?
Well, I don't know if this counts, but there's a wood chain that I used to always like. I'd always have to bring it with me. That had the logo of Sacrificial Poets, which was a community I was a part of in North Carolina. I never I almost wouldn't get on stage. I almost wouldn't get on stage. Like, oh, my necklace, I'm gonna mess up tonight. I can't do it. Like I need it. It was like my amulet or my talisman. So I probably would say that one. But I'm actually not. I used to I remember when I was really getting deep into looking at writing and performance as a profession. I was starting to get, I'd find leather handmade notebooks or ones you could find at specialty stores, and I'd get them, and it'd almost be too nice to where I wouldn't hardly ever write in them. So even now I got a stack of 8-9 joints in the house that have 8 pages used in all of them. And I say all that to say, I'm good on any composition book, any cheap joint from the CVS, whatever it is. I get down in that. It takes me back to the roots of just. I love you still using
pen and paper. Whenever I'm selling books, I'm like, this is old retro device.
Yes.
You don't have to charge it or anything. It's made of old trees. Believe it or not. Man, thank you so much for the rapid fire questions, man.
I'm sorry, it wasn't so rapid.
No, it was great. It took us down a tangent, and thank y'all for y'all questions. Absolutely beautiful.
How do you start writing a poem or a verse? That last one.
I love that. How do you start writing a poem or verse? Is there a specific thing, the way that you approach writing?
Man. Definitely different between poem and verse.
Yeah.
Again, this goes back to what you asked about earlier. I think the verse is cool because, again, it's not a solitary practice in the same way, because you are collaborating, whether you know the producer or it's just a beat of an anonymous one you find on YouTube. You're collaborating in real time with another artist's creation.
That's dope.
And so I love the verse piece because I just put on a beat. That's my process for a verse. Put on a beat and do a brainstorm of even just jotting before it's even rhyming, just jotting what images do I see, what emotions, what does this make me think of? Where am I? Am I in a smoky lounge? You know what I'm saying? Am I walking down an alley at night and it's misty out? Is it
do you
clear
use
sky?
A lot of the same tools as far as how you might approach writing a rap verse? I guess that's a bit of the same question, but are you thinking about it? Are you setting the scene when you're creating a poem? Are you thinking about it? And as a follow-up question, which I think is actually a pretty interesting question, is do you ever think I want to write about this topic specifically, but it's got to be a song, or this topic specifically, but this one's got to be a poem?
That's interesting. You know what? The album, not my last album, but the album before, which I think you have too, Soul Train Roberts, which was from when I first moved out here. There's a few songs on the album. I think 2 or 3 for sure that there's actually a poem version. And I then performed a poem. I have Sweet 16. It was called "Oh Carolina," but the song version is Sweet 16. At that time, I was like, I want to write them in both to learn and see what each of them does. And that was a really dope learning opportunity for me. And there are still times where it's like that. I'm working on one right now about being a father, about my son. And I'm definitely writing a poem, and I'm definitely going to make a song. And some of it there's some lines that cross over, and because I'm trying to see how both mediums, what each of them does.
I love it, man. I love it, bro.
But my first thing, the biggest one, and and it's like, I love sharing, just like I love hearing other artists talk about their process too, because I'm always like, I wish somebody out there take this idea, highlight me. I like to be involved, but I love to see someone do a documentary on process, interviewing poets and writers and MCs, and just hear everyone's process.
Yeah,
like, short little tips for me. I start with a word association. So I'll do a list of words that I associate with the topic, or if I have an idea for a theme or a metaphor or an image that strikes me, I'll first do it as many words as I can think of, nouns, adjectives, verbs, anything I can think of that is associated with that thing.
Wow.
And there's actually a really dope now, we're in the new age too. I like to do it on my own, but then I also, after I do it, see if there's anything I missed. There's a website called wordassociations.net. Fire. Check it out.
Check it out.
You put in a word, you know what I'm saying? You put in the word ship, and it's gonna come out with boat and hull and mast and sail, but it's also gonna be like FedEx, and you're gonna be like, what? It's like ship. So it also helps you think about double meanings, double entendres, and just that helps me to kind of start getting images together.
Did you just give away the Kane Smego cheat code? Did you just
so good, man.
I love it.
I can't use word association like I do.
You know, it's so funny as artists and as educators. Like as educators, educators are like, yo, take everything. Take the whole workshop. You want my curriculum? Take the curriculum. What you want? You want notebooks? What do you want? What do you want? Take it all. Take it all.
Source. What's the goal?
Educators, and then as artists, sometimes we're like, what? Like,
hold up, bro.
I do this here. Like,
don't worry about looking up.
Like, I just showed up. They'll be like, oh, here's my new piece, and it's memorized. It's already put together. They've been working on it. Yeah. And as a poet educator, you're like, so this is how I create this. You're selling the game, man. Totally, man. I love that question. That's super, super dope, bro. Thank you for answering that, man. And thank y'all for throwing these questions in here. I think there might have been one or two more. Any advice for young people who are exploring their art and gifts but are nervous to become a public artist in this current world? Do you have any advice for the
because I give this advice to my nephew, who produced a beat on the album when he was I think he was 19 at the time. He graduated, or actually he was 18. He graduated during the pandemic. One of those high school kids.
Wow.
And what I told him, man, because he's a really talented producer, but and I think he had real high goals, which is great to set really high goals. But what I told him is the same thing I tell every upcoming artist that I talk to is I'm not going to say that you can't blow up fast tomorrow, or whatever that means to you, because some people win the lottery, but if you plan your whole life on the lottery, it's not a good strategy. So my big thing is like, this is a long game, right? It's the long game. And what that means is if you're expecting it to happen fast, you're not going to last. So the first thing you should do is cultivate a love for your craft, because you're going to need that love to carry you through that time. You got to love it. You got to find a way to love it. I mean, you got to love it all the time. I hate writing and love writing at the same time, right? But you got to cultivate a love for it, because you're going to have to, it's going to have to be a long process. And then if you get success in 2 years, I could be jealous.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Yeah.
But it's a long process. So enjoy the road, enjoy the process.
I used to have to force myself to write.
Yo,
I'd be like, you try to be a poet, you gotta write.
Got to. You gotta be disciplined, yo.
Like,
that idea of like cultivate love, but also know that like just because Steph Curry loves basketball, don't mean he always want to go practice for 4 hours or take 10,000 shots. Of course, there are days where you don't want to do it. You got to develop a routine, and it's work too, But I think if you love it, overarching, you love it, even those moments where you're not loving it in that moment, you can push through and make yourself do it if you have a love for it.
We're gonna get into your set and let you really like open up and do a few pieces and maybe do like a 10 or 15 or however you want to rock for a second. But when was that moment? Was there a moment you can recall where you fell in love with poetry? Like I love asking that question. It's the Love Jones question.
Mm.
When did you fall in love with hip hop?
Yeah.
Or Skip Brown Sugar. At least you don't laugh at me. I never watched Love Jones. I'm the worst.
Loving
basketball. I knew Love was in this mud. I knew Love was in this. He's not loving basketball.
Either? I thought it was.
It's Love Jones.
Oh, it is Love Jones?
Okay, I was right off jump.
Wow.
See? Yeah,
Wow.
thank you. Thank you, community.
Wow.
When's the first time you ever felt? Kane, when's the first time you fell in love with hip hop?
Man, hip
Not
hop
hip
or
hop.
poetry.
Poetry
Yeah, so
specifically.
those are different.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I fell in love with hip hop in kindergarten when I first heard Jump and Crisscross,
Yeah.
and then heard Outkast do me.
Man,
Your mama and your cousin too, rolling down the street.
Oh.
And Mama Said Knock You Out by LL Cool J. But I didn't. And I started writing poetry because, in second and third grade, I realized that you could do a diorama. If there are kids out here listening, you don't know what that is. I don't think they do that anymore. But when we were a kid, it was like a diorama. It was like you could do a poster board, or a diorama was you get a shoebox and you make a scene. You cut out stuff on cardboard paper and you make a scene. And it's like, you know what I'm saying?
Man.
So you do a diorama, or you could write an essay, or you do a poem. What's that?
Huh.
Oh, it's like a rap? Bet. All my projects is going to be poems, right?
Love it.
Never doing another poster board again. But I didn't necessarily consider myself a poet because I still associated poetry with what was then a narrow exposure that we had, which is Rosa Red, Violets Are Blue, Diamantes, and just not diverse in any meaning of the word, from the writers to the styles. I was an MC, I was a rapper, and I remember when I came back to North Carolina, I had moved out to the Midwest for 2 years to live with my dad and my grandma, and I moved back and linked up with an old homie, CJ Suit, who was one of the co-founders of Sacrificial Poets, and he was doing spoken word and had gone to Breaking Voices and told me about this thing, and I ended up joining the team, and I went to New York City for Breaking Voices in 2006. My one and only year being eligible age-wise to go, but I remember going and being like, bro, I'm the illest. I'm about to be the illest, bro. I'm an MC, bro.
The greatest on the planet.
What you gonna do? And then going there and being like, whoa,
yeah,
we fall back, bro.
Yeah.
And that was what first made me say, you know what? I am an MC. I'm a rapper. I'm a poet. I want to be a poet. I am a poet.
Yeah.
I'm a poet. It became cool to be a poet. It became real. I started to realize that, wow, they're doing the same thing I've been doing, but they're really being open, honest, real, unique, creative. And that's when I fell in love with poetry, or when I realized that I'd always been in love with poetry, but I was willing to call it what it was.
Wow. Yeah.
Well,
it always blows people's mind when I'm like, hip hop is poetry. It's rhythm and poetry. It's rap. Rap, rhythm, and poetry. It always trips people out, man. But that's a beautiful. So what was that? 06, something like that.
06, man. 06. Yeah, I was 19 years old, and
crazy.
I was like,
crazy. Nova Kane.
That's right.
Nova Kane, man. I love it. Right. I love it. Man, well, Kane, you're such a dynamic creator. You're such a dynamic artist, and a person who has dedicated themselves to their craft, and also dedicated yourself to the work that you do for the world and for the communities that you find yourself in, which I think is really, really fire, and always been one of the things that I admire and love about you, man, and why you're my brother, man. And you're my brother for a lot of reasons, man. But I really appreciate the honor to have you come and speak to our community here at Street Poets. You are, you Street Poets fam now. So, you know what I'm saying? Don't be a stranger. You're always welcome to it. And for the final bits of our session together, man, I'd love for you to bless us with a handful of poems.
Let's do it. How about this? I'll do a medley of bars, because if we talk about I'm an MC and poetry is rap and rap poetry, and then I'll close with one more poem.
Yeah. We got a chunk of time too, so if you really want to open it up with a couple pieces, you're good. I'm gonna give you some space, and y'all, without further ado, give it up for Kane Smego.
Thank you. So make some noise, all the hip hop heads out there. Put your hands in the air. Silence is deafening. Okay, that's what's up. Thank y'all, man. We gotta have some bars. Let me get some water right quick. Did I drink all this, or did you drink some of this? You might have been drinking that one. Why? Find out you got a Gatorade and have a glass of water over there. I got $1 in my wallet and a pocket full of change. Palms burning up, trying to hold on to a dream. Got a fist full of lightning and a heart full of soul. Banging on my chest, you know the thunder gonna roll. I got nowhere to be, but I got somewhere to go. Follow, follow, follow. Follow, follow, follow. Yeah. They say silence is said to be golden, but I defy it. I was chosen. My saliva is molten. I get it cracking like Leviathan tentacles holding fire in every doses. Highest intensity voltage, Zion and Pelican clothing. Putting my dukes up with Carolina blue blood. Southern boy raising my fingers up to the Ku Klux. True love for the region I'm from means that I shun any monument or statue that made a profit from shackles. While we spot you in the present, when the violence you're attached to should have died up in the past. Try to hide you like a tattoo we wish we never had. Cheap Confederate brand. Next generation, we should raise them instead of a flag. Bury the false idols. Restore vitals to the divided. Build a pedestal for every soul we ever lost sight of. Swinging around katana blades, bringing out any sign of hate. Chopping up in the piranha bait and cooking them on the flame. I'm rubbing on that humble pie. Someone that prima donna cake, stuck them in their headspace. I'm gonna be McConaughey, my interstate stiller than monasteries and hideaways. I know who I am, and I know who I ain't. I be that down south southern moonshine runner, bathtub full of venom for the goon squad, trying to put the bullseye on me when I pull side. Brother, have me drowning like a mule with the hooves tied under, sinking in the deep end of an ocean full of bleachers. And I ain't got no trouble breathing, come my lungs can hold. Gallows more than every single rapper, every punching in the verse while I cycle till the sun gets cold. Yeah, and the flow is so sharp. Weaving through the gills of a hammerhead shark like I'm Barry Sanders, cutting through the secondary, yelling to the camera. You can leave me with the scrubs and I'm still gonna ball. What I'm trying to say is that I'm not afraid. I won't accommodate and get accommodated. Any kind of fake phony mug, trying to find a way to make a little money off a culture we define as sacred. Tread of water drowning in a pool of shoulda, coulda, woulda. Foolish, put another shoe into the gutter of the past. Instead of chance with a foot advance, other looking back in a roll full of ash. Language is suicide, knew it quite fluent. Only thing I ever knew to do was write through it. I said language is suicide, knew it quite fluent. Only thing I ever knew to do was write through it. Rooted like Buddha, trying to scuba dive sewage in the belly of the storm, and I'm chewing right through it. Do it, do it. Thunder and the lightning, slumber in a nightmare, world full of darkness. I be the one in lightning, because too many fish swim in schools. I'm a rare tuna, barrel through your barricade, grinning like a barracuda, parachuter steering through the air into the crosshairs of the red baron, peering down his cannon barrel, shooting. I ain't afraid of falling. I got no fear of losing. Used to be a Ferris Bueller, running from my principles. Since I've been adhering to them, damn near invincible. Lamb beer with the pistons, a Pam Grier with a pistol full of hot vengeance. Top pilling misogynist. I want the props that's not Guinness, but God-given. The top 10 is just not finished till I'm in it. I'm Billy Hall, the jump shot that shocked Venice. Eeny, meeny, my, I got the genie in my palm. Some call it the truth or Kundalini of the spine. Some overcompensate Lamborghini with the shine. Me, I rhyme more like Dr. Strange. Trust me with your time. Time. Some bars for the hip hop heads. Gotta do some bars. Gotta do some bars.
Hit him with them Kareem Abdul-Jabbar bars.
Wow. He took it there. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar bars. Cool. All right. So we'll do two more. Everybody got through the pandemic in different ways. For me, I had to have, everybody has to have their guilty pleasures. Like when we're not reading or we're not studying the craft and we're not being disciplined, we got to have some fun. And for me, I'm like a time travel movie fanatic. Like I'm all about time travel movies. I was binging them, right? Like old ones, Back to the Future, new ones, Looper, Deja Vu, whatever it was, I was watching them, right? And I love time travel movies. And I think back to like when I went to Brave New Voices when I was younger, and somebody was doing a poem like I remember those days like when we used to like blow on Nintendo cartridges to make them work. Like I want to go back to, and I was like, I want to write a poem like that. But I'm like, I want to go back though. I want to go a little further than that. So if you're out there, and I'm gonna need the folks in this room to help me with this because we need to have an audience. This usually I do this as a collaborative poem. So anytime in the poem, when I go like this, I'm gonna say, I want to go back. And when I go like this, you're gonna say way back, but you're gonna drag it out like that. So we're gonna practice this real quick. Yeah?
Yeah.
All right, right quick. I want to go back.
Way back.
Yeah, and we gonna just keep it loud because you know how we tend to like fade as the poem goes on. So we're gonna stay loud from the beginning, right? So sometimes people call me old-fashioned, others in old soul. Maybe I'm just an old fool, but I want to be old school. And I ain't talking Puma suedes and starter jackets. Nah, I mean, I wanna count my blessings on an abacus and write poems in oracle bones. Sign my John Hancock with hieroglyphics in stone. Walk like Australopithecus, Rome, one land, a patriot of Pangea. Feel what it's really like to live in a world united. I want to go back
Way back.
I said I want to go back.
Way back.
And sip pina coladas in the ice age on the rocks. I want to climb to the frozen summit of a Cretaceous peak in the Andes Mountains and drink the first drops of the Amazon. Eat fried dinosaur and take joy rides on Pteranodon. Sleep in pitch black nights devoid of moonlight before Earth got shot by a trigger-happy asteroid. I want to go back.
Way back.
Pre-Columbian and administer smallpox vaccines to the Native Americans, Aztecs, and Inca. Tell Moctezuma that Cortés was not the god Quetzalcoatl, but just a greedy conquistador. I want to go back.
Way back.
And leave messages on the back of postcards with photos of integrated schools on Martin's desktops. You know his death's not in vain. Leave sticky notes for Emiliano Zapata, Lumumba, Malcolm, and Mahan. Just tell them to love, not forgotten. I want to go back.
Way back.
And freestyle creation myths over ancient drum beats and spray paint peace and graffiti across the Great Wall of China. I want to meditate with Siddhartha under the Bodhi tree so I can witness the moment of enlightenment as Gautama became the Buddha. I want to go back.
Way back.
And do the with King Tut at Giza. Look down and tell Cleopatra, watch her ass. It's a snake. Asp. Crack short jokes on Napoleon at Waterloo and tell Caesar, behind you, behind you. I want to be old school. I want to live old school. I want to go back.
Way back.
To the old school. And tell them that they were cool. Hey, 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 hey. Thank you indeed. So a little fun, a little time travel, nostalgia, and thank y'all for those of y'all out there sitting in your living room looking like crazy people with like relatives and the other. If you're listening to this with headphones on, I especially appreciate the commitment to you being like way back, and people like, what's going on in there? Greatly appreciate you. So I was thinking about also today. Me and Matt, me and Cuban, we're talking a lot about just the idea of healing in general, you know, in the arts and the craft as a tool for healing, and you know, being able to write about my grandparents, my father, who I also lost to suicide in 2012, just navigating those kind of things, deep traumas, working through those things, figuring out how we have closure, and then also on a slightly lighter note. This next piece is also about, like, I know if you've ever had those moments where you get into it with somebody or somebody says something that bothers you and you like, and then you go, but you might say something a little short and then you go home and you like have an argument in the shower and you kill them. Like you smash everything they said, you bringing up historical references and facts and right, you breaking it down and you're like, dang, I wish I would have said that. But I use that as a practice too. I like to have debates in the comfort of my own home too, to prepare so that when I am out in the world, maybe one day I'll be able to kick this. So this came from that, right? This came from this story. And it all starts with, and I think it will connect to what we were talking to about language as well. It all starts with a game. The cards are dealt and we're barely more than strangers. I say, I ain't played in a while. They say, ain't. Really? How can you be a poet, someone who cares so much about words, and butcher the language with a word like ain't? Forgive mine, sneak hither. The peradventure thy historical distemperate, sir, hath led thee to unglut yon motley minded and babin troth, which I take in snuff. The language thee and I speaketh anon hath been steeled still. That's early modern English from just about 400 years ago. Allow me to translate. Forgive my sarcasm here. But perhaps your historical laziness has led you to swallow that foolish and worthless idea, to which I take offense, that the language you and I speak now has been fixed and permanent forever. Well, it ain't, and it never will be. Now, you say it's an uneducated word, right? I agree in a way, as in it's a word most people aren't educated about. Now, here's where I, poet and lover of all things literary, would choose to employ an obnoxious rhetorical question like, did you know that the word ain't first came into usage as a contraction in the 1600s? And did you know that it was widely used by common folk or uneducated people, as well as the middle and upper classes, including such famous writers as Lord Byron, Jonathan Swift, George Eliot, until the 1800s, when grammarians from the elite class decided they didn't want to sound like common folk. They wanted to speak traditional English, proper, you know, the way it was meant to be spoken way back, just not too far back, because they couldn't speak Old English and barely Middle English, but maybe back to how their parents spoke it, or maybe their grandparents, or people from their region of the country or their side of town. Yes, with their same ancestry. Yes, English was meant to be spoken just like them, and all the other words, phrases, structures should be carved away, sliced off, ground to a pulp. Butchered. In other words, I ain't the one butchering nothing. If you're planning on pointing out my use of a double negative there as bad grammar, well, those was used to the 1800s too. About the same time period as this guy, Samuel L. Johnson's dictionary became famous. His was actually the one that Webster's replaced. Now, at first, his stated goal was to set the rules of English in stone, preserve the purity of the language. But when he finally finished it 8 years later, you know what he said? Sounds are too volatile and subtle for legal restraints. To enchain syllables and to lash the wind is equally the undertakings of pride. It took 3.5 billion years for life on this planet to evolve this invisible miracle. And you think you can stop the process now? Cryo-freeze your way of speaking in time. We done crawled out the oceans, learned to stand up straight and sing like the birds, and language gave our thoughts legs, grew feet on our ideas and dreams. And you're worried about the shade of toenail polish? Think you can slay this hydra of 10,000 tons, baby? This is ancient magic. To conjure image with sound, Lazarus, a memory, awaken the sweet mercy of laughter. You better stack your grammar books 10 stories high and let the match teach them its choir song of flame, because ain't no simple equation for this divine algebra of breath and throat and tongue and ear. Ain't no way to chain up a miracle, especially not one with feet that walk on air. So where you gonna tie up the syllables? Padlock the diphthongs, bending bars, put all the idioms on trial. Tell the Creoles, pick a side, but only this one. It's the right one. It's right because I said it is, or my professor did, or my English teacher did, or some guy in the news did, starting his sentence with, kids these days. And maybe you agree with them that my use of some words is coarse, ignorant, even impolite, but haven't you heard it's rude to talk with your mouth full of other people's ideas you haven't even looked into yet? You see, tradition is an absentee father who won't admit that change was his firstborn and his last name, was the way he became tradition in the first place. Language wasn't meant to be perfect or polished or pretty or dressed in an undersized suit and told to sit still for the picture. How was it meant to be spoken in? Well, it was meant to be spoken. And so, all those demanding we speak correct, proper, educated, just like them, I offer my apologies, said with a slight drawl, and I'm using my apostrophes. Sorry, we ain't y'all. Thank you. Woo! Hey, I won my shower argument.
And by the way,
man,
y'all, Kane Smego, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Brilliant, man. So versatile, dog. Just personally, man, like I love being able to just kick it and talk with you, dog. This is cool, man.
The feeling is mutual.
We need to do more of this.
We should. We need to.
I'm always like, we hang out, man. You want to play Cuphead? you want to watch me play Call of Duty?
Yeah.
But yo, tell us where we can find more of your work and support the incredible stuff you're doing there.
Thank you, man. You can find all my music on, thank you, Sean. Thank you for the love. You can find all my music on all major platforms, so like iTunes, Spotify, Tidal, all that kind of stuff. My one-man show is just on pause right now because I got the young and I got the 5-month-old, so I can't be
5 months hot off the presses.
Hot off the presses. I can't be out of town for 6 weeks in another city. But hopefully 2023, trying to bring Temples of Longinair back and maybe to a theater here in LA. But in the meantime, I've been having the coolest thing lately creatively. You asked me what am I working on? I was like a child, fatherhood, but also there's an amazing dance organization, hip hop dance crew, cultural preservationists, as we talked about. They've been around for 17 years. They just had their 17th anniversary, called Versastyle. Dance crew based here in LA.
Shout out to Versastyle.
Yeah, shout out to Jackie Lopez, Breeze Lee Fawad, Harry Weston. The list goes on. The whole dance company, and they have they do a lot of hip hop theater work as well. They teach programs in schools around the city. after school programs, weekly everything from house to popping, locking.
Yeah. I will also say VersaStyles is one of our partners in the AHJN network.
Oh, that's right.
Organization.
Yeah.
So we tight like that.
Amazing, man. Amazing. And we got to collaborate with some of them. A couple of them, actually, one of their dancers, Harry Weston, is in Ghana on Next Level right now.
Beautiful.
Yep. So he's been involved with the Hip Hop Exchange program. But they had a work of hip hop theater called Free Mind, Free Style. It's a really dope. It's about a 90-minute show with the whole dance company. It's about 12 dancers. And they had never collaborated with a poet as part of the show before, and asked me to collaborate with them and write some pieces and form the show. So we got to put it on October 1st, 2021 at the Ford Theater, which is crazy. It's like the biggest, the first big show since pandemic. It was crazy. Dance community came out, showed love, and we just got to do an excerpt from it at East Torres LA Magnet School, East LA, last Sunday as part of their 17th anniversary. So all that to say, keep a lookout. Check out VersaStyle Dance Company. They're amazing. They have a website. They do amazing work, and maybe you'll even see me sharing stage with them and rocking some poems and bars while they're killing it on the dance floor, which I do not do.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Man, y'all, again, poet, rapper, educator, playwright, activist, awesome all-around person, Kane Smego, joining us today. Really appreciate you coming through, bro. Really appreciate you doing this for us.
So much.
We appreciate y'all joining us this evening and spending some time kicking it with us. Thank y'all so much for the love. Thank y'all on StreamYard. All the homies are in the various places that we are streaming.
Thank you,
we appreciate
Sean and Rosalind Marie. I appreciate the love. I see y'all's comments. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. And with that, y'all have a wonderful rest of your evening. Have a wonderful weekend. And thank you so much for joining Street Poets Presents. We'll be back next month with some cool stuff. And until then, be safe, take care of yourself, and see you soon. Bye, everybody.
Peace.